A single gunshot cracked the desert night, echoing across the empty canyons until even the stars seemed to flinch. Years had passed since the cowboy fired that bullet, but the sound still lived inside him. He carried it like a shadow, an echo that never died. That was the night his brother fell, and with him, every reason to laugh, to dream, to share words with the living. The world kept turning, the sun kept rising, yet for him time stood still. He built fences, mended saddles, rode across silent plains, but each day was nothing more than a hollow shell of the one before. The town whispered about him, some with pity, others with unease, as if his silence was a sickness that might spread. He had not taken a wife. He had not taken a friend. Even the saloon, filled with its rough laughter and sour whiskey, knew him only as the man who leaned against its wall, a figure carved from stone. A black beard framed his face, but the years had carved it into something harder, less yielding, like the cliffs beyond town. Women passed him by with quick glances, their eyes lingering only a heartbeat before moving on. He did not chase, and he did not stay. Every man carries a burden, but his was not the kind that showed in scars or limps. His burden was silence itself, a silence so deep that even the coyotes avoided howling near his camp. He told himself it was safer this way. Safer not to care, not to hope, not to let another soul cross the walls he had built so carefully. Solitude was his shield, and he wore it like armor. Then came the afternoon that broke the rhythm. The air was hotter than usual, the dust heavy enough to cling to his tongue. He stood where he always did, leaning against the sun-faded boards of the saloon, watching life go on without him. Wagons creaked past. A dog barked. A woman scolded her child for running too close to the horses. And then the sound of hooves rose above the ordinary hum, sharp and sure, carrying weight that did not belong to passing traders. Heads turned. The town paused. Two riders came into view, their horses tall and sure-footed, their figures commanding in a way that set them apart at once. Sisters, it was clear from the way their faces mirrored one another, though each bore her own kind of beauty. One wore emerald green with threads of gold that caught the sun like sparks. The other wore royal purple trimmed with turquoise, a living flame in motion. Their dark hair flowed loose, adorned with bands of feathers and beads that glimmered as they rode. But it was not their beauty that stopped the breath in his chest. It was the weight of their presence, as if the desert itself bent around them. The townsfolk murmured. Some spoke of distant nations, of chiefs and daughters who carried both tradition and knowledge of the settlers' world. The cowboy listened, though he made no move to join the whispers. His eyes followed them as they dismounted, walking side by side beneath the wooden porch. Their steps were quiet, their eyes steady, and for the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a figure of stone, but as a man. They passed him, and though their words were not yet spoken, something passed between them all the same. A recognition, a question, perhaps even a challenge. The saloon keeper later claimed he saw the cowboy's hand twitch at his side, as if his body betrayed the secret stirring in his heart. Night fell, and with it came the desert wind, carrying the scent of sage and the promise of rain. The cowboy sat outside, his boots resting against the dust, his hat tilted low. He thought of the riders, their eyes sharp as stars. He told himself it meant nothing, just a glance, just a passing. But his heart, stubborn as it was, would not obey. The sound of footsteps broke the silence. He looked up. There they stood, both sisters, lit by the thin glow of the moon. They had not come with guards, nor with hesitation. They came as if guided by something older than themselves. Their voices, when they spoke, were soft but unyielding, the kind of sound that sank deeper than the ear and struck the marrow. They told him they had watched him from afar, not just today, but through stories that carried on the wind. They knew of his silence, his grief, his strength. And they had not come for trade, nor for passing rest. They had come for him. Their words, though simple, shook the ground beneath his soul. They asked him not for friendship, not for protection, but for something far greater. They asked him to marry them both. For a long moment he could not breathe. The desert stretched out around them, endless and still, as if the world itself waited for his answer. His life of solitude, the walls he had built, the years of silence, all of it trembled on the edge of breaking. He stared at them, his jaw set, his heart louder than the storm rolling in the distance. And when at last he found his voice, it came as nothing more than a whisper. Why me? Lightning ripped the sky open. white fire tearing through the black, and the rain followed in sheets that drowned the desert silence. The cowboy stood alone beneath it, the storm soaking his beard and hat, while the two sisters faced him with eyes brighter than the thunder above. He had thought their request a jest, a passing fancy, yet here they stood unshaken, asking for his hand as if destiny itself had carved their path. Their words echoed in him, louder than the storm, pulling apart the careful solitude he had built. He had not spoken of his brother in years, but tonight his memory pressed heavy. It was the same kind of night years ago, when the river ran high and swollen, when his brother had slipped under the water before he could reach him. That was the first time he knew the cruelty of helplessness, the second when the grave was filled. He had sworn then to need no one, to protect no one, because love was a chain that snapped under weight. Yet here, two women of fire and grace offered him not a chain, but a bond strong enough to terrify him. Ilara, in emerald and gold, stepped forward first. Her voice was steady, like roots deep in the earth. She spoke of duty, of a vision sent in dream, where two sisters walked beside one man and together built peace between worlds. She did not speak of romance as townsfolk knew it. She spoke of destiny, of choice, of courage. Celine, in purple and turquoise, moved after, her voice lighter, the song to her sisters' ground. She spoke not of duty but of heart, of laughter, of healing, of the way the cowboy's silence had already broken something in her, making her long to mend it. The cowboy clenched his fists. He was not a man who prayed, but in that moment he wanted the storm to swallow him whole, to spare him this impossible fork in the road. To choose meant breaking the safety of solitude, meant stepping into a life that demanded he carry others again. Yet to refuse meant turning his back on something rare, something that even the desert seemed to bow before. The days that followed offered no reprieve. The sisters stayed near, moving like shadows through the town, though they carried themselves with dignity that silenced mockery. They came to the cowboy not with demands, but with presence. Ilara sat by him at the fence, speaking of the future, of children who would know both earth and fire, of bridges between people who had always stood apart. Celine brought laughter, coaxing him into small smiles, reminding him that even sorrow could yield light if shared. He had not felt this torn since the river took his brother. One evening the saloon keeper, a man of gray hair and glassy eyes, poured him a drink and leaned across the counter. "Boy," he rasped, "sometimes the desert gives you gold once, and only once. If you let it slip to sand, you'll never find it again." The cowboy left his glass untouched, but the words burned hotter than whiskey. The storm returned 3 nights later, fierce as if the heavens demanded an answer. Rain lashed the earth, and the sisters stood before him again, gowns plastered to their skin, hair wild in the wind. Together they knelt in the mud, their voices joined in plea and defiance. "We choose you, not apart but together. Will you walk with us, or turn back to your silence forever?" His chest ached as if the storm had taken root inside it. He looked down at them, two faces gleaming with rain and fire, and he knew no choice was safe. To take them meant breaking every wall he had built. To refuse meant carrying emptiness until death. The weight of years pressed on him, every mile of solitude, every hollow sunrise, every echo of his brother's drowning cry. The thunder cracked again, and in that shattering noise he felt something break open within him. For the first time in years, he let the silence fall away. He sank to his knees in the rain, pulling both sisters into his arms, not as possession but as surrender, as if he were the one being saved. The storm raged on, but inside him a gentler storm rose, a rush of warmth, of fear, of impossible hope. Yet even as he held them, a darker shadow stirred at the edge of a horizon, unseen but certain. Some loves come with blessings. Others arrive with a cost. And deep in the thunder, he thought he heard a voice that was not the storm all, his brother's voice, warning him that every bond carries a price.